Evening was falling heavily over the mountains of Transylvania. The cold autumn wind howled through the bare branches as shadows stretched long over the dusty village paths. Along a narrow dirt road, a weary father and his 5-year-old son, Robert, hurried along, hoping to reach the town before darkness swallowed the last light. But time was not on their side. They stopped in the middle of the empty village. The old houses, with their cracked walls and sagging roofs, seemed to watch them in silence. A faint light glimmered from a distant church window, but around them, there was no sign of life.
"Dad, where do we go now?"
whispered Robert, clutching his wooden toy tightly. The father scanned the area, concern etching deeper into his tired face. It was too late to keep going. They needed a place to stay the night. But the village, it felt dead.
What are you doing here at this hour? No one wanders through this village anymore.
We're trying to reach the town, but night caught up with us. We're looking for a place to stay the night.
The town? Huh? That's far from here. You won't find anything nearby. But if you're not afraid, I can offer you shelter for the night. The house is old, but it still keeps the rain and cold out.
Thank you. If it's no trouble, we'd appreciate it.
We all need a place to rest, at least for one more night.
The old woman led them through a crooked wooden gate, its hinges groaning under its own weight. Her house stood tall but fragile, its walls cracked, with ivy creeping up the sides, and the roof sagging as though time itself had grown tired. The father hesitated as he stepped inside. The air was heavy, thick with the scent of damp wood and something older. Dust swirled in the air, caught in the soft flicker of a candle resting on an aged wooden table at the center of the room. In the fireplace, a lone log burned weakly, its embers casting shaky shadows on the cracked walls.
Sit.
The old woman rasped, gesturing towards the table.
You must be hungry.
She shuffled toward the kitchen, her cane tapping the wooden floor. Moments later, she returned with 2 shallow bowls filled with a strange, watery broth and 2 chunks of hard bread. The father and Robert exchanged uneasy glances, but hunger won over caution. They ate in near silence, the only sound being the soft crackle of the fire. The old woman sat by the fireplace, her sharp gray eyes fixed on them, her thin lips curling into an unreadable smile.
It's been years since anyone's walked through this village. You're the first souls I've seen in a long while.
Thank you for letting us stay. It's hard to find kindness on the road these days.
Kindness? Oh, there's plenty of that, if you know where to look.
"Dad, it smells weird here."
It's just old, Robbie. Don't worry.
Eat. You'll need your strength for the road.
"I don't like it."
Just a few bites, buddy. We can't be rude.
The old woman watches them closely, her bony fingers gripping the cane, tapping it rhythmically on the floor. As the last of the bread disappeared, the father's gaze wandered around the room. His eyes landed on an old, dust-covered portrait hanging crookedly on the wall. He squinted. It was untold familiar. A man and a young boy stood in the picture, eerily resembling himself and Robert. But their faces were scratched out, deep, violent gouges torn across where their features should have been. A cold shiver crawled down his spine.
That picture. Who are they?
That? Oh, I don't remember. Been there for as long as I can recall. You should rest. The night's heavy here. You'll need your strength.
The old woman led them down a narrow, creaking hallway. The walls were bare, except for a few dark stains and deep scratches that time hadn't managed to fade. At the end of the hall was a small wooden room, cold, damp, and barely lit by the flickering light of a dying candle. A single rickety bed sat against the wall, its wooden frame cracked and groaning under its own weight. The father laid a tattered blanket over Robert, who clutched his wooden toy tightly. Exhaustion pulled at his heavy eyelids, but unease lingered in the air like a cold draft.
Try to get some sleep, Robbie,
The father whispered, though his own eyes darted nervously around the dark room.
Dad, is she nice?
She's just old, buddy. Don't worry. We'll be gone by morning.
I miss Mom.
I know, Robbie. I know.
So the candle eventually burned out, and darkness swallowed the room. Only the distant crackle of the dying fire in the other room broke the silence. But then, there was a noise, a faint creak, then another, somewhere beyond the door. The father's eyes snapped open. In the blackness, he could barely make out the small shape of Robert, now awake and sitting up in bed. "Dad, did you hear that?" Robert whispered. Before the father could answer, Robert slipped out of bed, his small feet barely making a sound as he padded toward the door. "Robert!" the father hissed, but the boy had already disappeared into the shadows.
I think I hear someone.
Robbie, wait! Don't!
But the boy is gone, leaving only the faint echo of the creaking floorboards, moments stretched into eternity. Then footsteps. Light. Fast. Robert reappeared at the doorframe, his face lit by an odd excitement.
Dad, I found Mom. She's here. She's in the house.
The father's heart stopped. In the dimness behind Robert, a shadow shifted. Tall, twisted. A dark silhouette loomed at the edge of the hallway, motionless yet suffocating in its presence.
Robert, your mother's been gone for 2 years. She's not here.
Robert's smile fades for a moment, confusion flickering in his eyes. But the shadow behind him remains still. Panic clawed at the father's throat. The shadow behind Robert leaned forward, its form stretching into the darkness.
Robbie, come to me, now!
The father shouted, but Robert didn't move. Instead, the boy slowly turned and began walking toward the waiting silhouette. The father lunged from the bed, his breath ragged, his feet stumbling on the old wooden floor. But he was too late. Robert vanished into the darkness. The father stumbled into the dark hallway, his footsteps echoing as he chased after his son. Panic gripped his chest as he rounded the corner, only to find the room empty. No Robert. No shadow. Nothing but the cold creak of the wooden floor beneath his boots. His eyes darted across the dim space until they landed on the wall. The same portrait he had noticed before. But now, it had changed. The scratches were gone. He stepped closer, the air around him colder with every breath. The portrait now revealed 3 clear faces, Robert, the old woman, and another man. A man that looked just like him. But his own face in the painting was still scratched out, deep, violent lines marring the canvas.
No, this isn't possible.
His trembling fingers reach out but stop just short of the canvas. He hears soft footsteps behind him. He turns, but the hallway is empty. The candle on the table flickered violently. A cold gust of air swept through the house. Then, darkness. The father was swallowed whole by the blackness, his breathing shallow, his heart racing. The silence was deafening. Then, the soft creak of the floorboards. Something, or someone, was still there. A faint shape emerged from the darkness. The old woman's face, hollowed by the shadows, appeared inches from the father's. Her pale, cracked lips curled into a wide, knowing smile. Her gray eyes gleamed with something ancient, something cold.
You never left,
she whispered. Before he could react, the candle flared once, then died completely. The last thing he saw was the boy, Robert, standing beside the old woman, their silhouettes merging with the shadows. And then, nothing. The next morning, the village sat silent once more. The house, old and hollow, stood untouched. No signs of life, but inside, the portrait hung on the wall, now complete. The father's face, once scratched out, was finally clear. His eyes hollow, lifeless. The boy stood at his side, and between them, the old woman, her faint smile frozen in the painting. Some places remember, some places never let go.